It was the week before Thanksgiving when Marcus decided to drive home. Not fly, drive. 20-something hours across a country he thought he knew well enough. 3 days if he paced himself, 2 if he pushed. He'd made this trip before, 3 times actually, and every single time he swore he wouldn't do it again. Not because anything bad had ever happened, because nothing happened. Miles and miles of nothing. Open farmland bleeding into forests so dense the tree line looked like a wall. The same flat horizon for hours at a stretch. The kind of driving that doesn't feel like moving at all. Just you and the road, and the faint, creeping suspicion that the scenery hasn't changed since the last state line. The first stretch was always fine. Interstates, truck stops, the ordinary machinery of a country in motion, other headlights, in radio signal, the feeling that if something went wrong, someone would be close enough to notice. Marcus had always told himself the drive wasn't so bad when he stuck to the main roads. It was leaving the main roads that he could never fully explain afterward. On the second day, somewhere past the midpoint of nowhere, his GPS rerouted him. Construction closure ahead. Take the exit. He took it. The road it put him on was technically still a highway. Same asphalt, same painted lines. But everything else about it was different. 1 lane. No trucks. No signs pointing toward anything with more than a few hundred people in it. Just a road that seemed to exist for the sole purpose of getting from one empty place to another, slightly emptier one. He got on it around 7 in the evening. Dark already, the kind of dark that doesn't ease up. He told himself he'd find somewhere to stop within the hour. A motel, a truck stop, anything with lights on and other people in it. He drove for 2 hours and found nothing. And then finally, at the edge of his headlights, a gas station. The gas station looked like it had been sitting in that exact spot since before the highway existed. 1 pump, a single light buzzing under the overhang, throwing a weak yellow circle onto the cracked concrete below. No town behind it, no houses in any direction. Just the dark and the tree line, and Marcus pulling in because there was simply nowhere else to go. He topped off his tank and went inside. The man behind the counter looked up like he'd forgotten the door could open. Late 50s, maybe older, with the kind of face that had spent decades squinting into weather. His name tag read Delvoy. He didn't say anything at first, just watched Marcus walk to the counter the way you watch something that doesn't quite belong. Marcus asked if he could park in the lot for a few hours and sleep in his car. Delvoy nodded slowly, said the station was closing in 15 minutes and he'd be heading out, but that Marcus was welcome to stay the night in the lot. Then he said it. "You can stay if you're comfortable out there." "Not sure. Go ahead. Not no problem at all. If you're comfortable out there." Marcus bought 2 energy drinks, said thanks, and walked back to his car, turning that phrase over in his head. If you're comfortable. Like comfort was something that required consideration. Like Delvoy knew something about that parking lot after dark that he'd decided wasn't his place to say out loud. Marcus told himself he was reading into it. Tired people hear things that aren't there. 15 minutes later, he heard the door lock, heard Delvoy's car start and crunch out of the gravel lot. Then the overhead light died and the darkness that followed was total. The kind that has weight to it, that presses against the windows. Marcus reclined his seat, set an alarm and closed his eyes. He doesn't know if he actually slept. What he knows is that somewhere close to an hour later, he heard tires on gravel. Slow. No engine rev. Just the sound of something rolling into the lot, getting closer, then stopping. He opened his eyes and a dark pickup truck was sitting right beside his door. No headlights, no interior light, just a shape in the black facing him. Marcus didn't think. He started the car and drove. He made it a quarter mile before he hit something in the road. Heavy, the impact shuddering through the whole frame. He stopped, got out. I walked back. In the reach of his taillights, there was a duffel bag in the middle of the road, the kind that was large enough to make his stomach drop before his brain could explain why. He heard the truck before he saw it. He ran. He got out. He drove 45 minutes with shaking hands before his phone found a single bar of signal. He pulled over and called 911, reported everything, sat in the dark waiting. The officer who called back 20 minutes later was calm, unhurried. "We'll send someone out," he said. Marcus thanked him, hung up, and kept driving. He didn't know yet what they would find when they got there. That part wouldn't come until 3 weeks later, in a phone call he wasn't expecting, from a detective named Sarah Voot. But that comes later. He didn't sleep after the phone call, just drove. By morning, the adrenaline had flattened into something duller and harder to name. Not calm, just exhausted past the point of feeling it. He stopped for gas, drank one of the energy drinks from the night before, and told himself the worst of it was behind him. 2 more days, main roads the rest of the way. He had a route and he was going to stick to it. He made it 4 hours before the GPS rerouted him. Construction closure ahead, exit in half a mile. The same instruction, the same calm voice, the same small decision that didn't feel like a decision at all. He took the exit. The road it sent him down was dusted with thin snow that hadn't been touched by tires in a while. In no tracks ahead of him, no cars behind. The interstate disappeared in his mirror, and the landscape flattened out into the kind of empty that had stopped surprising him 2 days ago. He passed nothing for over an hour. Then lights. A small cluster of them, low and scattered, maybe 20 buildings total. As he got closer, the town dissolved into something that looked less inhabited than it first appeared. Old storefronts with dark windows, a single streetlight on a corner, the general feeling of a place that had been slowly giving up for 30 years. He was running low on gas. The station on the edge of town had a flickering light under the overhang and a pump that looked like it worked. He pulled in and noticed the other car immediately. A gray SUV sat at the pump across from him, packed solid, suitcases stacked to the ceiling, and bags wedged into every gap. Someone mid-journey. Someone who had stopped here exactly like Marcus was stopping now. But the car was empty, engine cold, nobody standing beside it, nobody inside the building because the building was dark and locked. Marcus scanned the lot twice, then the street beyond it. Nothing moved. He started filling his tank and watching that SUV. The silence was the wrong kind. Not peaceful, not empty. The kind of silence that means something is holding its breath. He'd been standing there maybe 2 minutes when the scream came. A man's voice somewhere out in the dark past the edge of the station light, tearing through the quiet with a single word. Help. Marcus spun toward it, saw nothing. Then the voice came again, closer, raw, and urgent, and his body moved before his mind caught up. 2 steps away from his car, he toward the sound, eyes searching the black. Movement to his left, then his right, then 3, 4 figures coming out of the dark at a dead sprint, coordinated, purposeful, covering ground fast. Marcus turned and ran. He got to his car in seconds, drove without looking back, heart hammering so loud he could barely think. He reported it when he had a signal. 2 days later, Corvin Reese was reported missing by his family. 3 weeks after that, they found him in a field 4 miles from that pump. The investigation is still open. No arrests have ever been made. Marcus didn't know any of that yet when he kept driving north, hands tight on the wheel, telling himself one more night and he'd be through the worst of it. He was wrong. 20 hours without real sleep does something to your judgment. It doesn't shut it off. It just softens the edges, makes the reasonable feel more reasonable than it should. That's the only way Marcus could explain what happened next. The sign said, "Rest Stop," 1 mile, and he took it without thinking twice. He told himself it would be the kind of place with 18-wheelers idling in rows and other travelers sleeping in their cars and enough ambient human presence to make the dark feel manageable. He'd been on the road for 3 days. He needed 4 hours on a flat surface. That was all. The exit ramp curved downward into a wall of trees. Within seconds, the highway was gone. No sound, no light, no indication it existed at all. The ramp kept descending into forest so dense it felt less like pulling off a road and more like being swallowed. When the lot finally opened up at the bottom, Marcus sat in it for a moment without moving. Not one other vehicle, not a single one. The building was clean and the lights inside were on, which should have helped and somehow didn't. The forest on all 3 sides was a solid black wall. He couldn't hear the highway. He couldn't hear anything. He used the restroom, walked back to the van, pulled the curtain across the front cab, and lay down on the mattress in the back. He was asleep in under 3 minutes. He woke to voices, 2 men talking quietly, close enough that they had to be standing right outside the van. Marcus sat up and held completely still. He checked his phone. 3 a.m. He pulled the curtain back half an inch and looked out at the lot. Empty. Not one other car had pulled in. He looked out the side window. A man was standing there, face inches from the glass, staring directly at him. The man stepped back the moment their eyes met. The voices dropped to a murmur. Then they stopped entirely, and the silence that replaced them was worse than anything that had come before. The silence of people who have decided to stop making noise on purpose. Marcus started the van. He made it halfway up the ramp before the rear right corner collapsed. The tire had been shredded to the rim while he slept, and the sound it made against the asphalt was the sound of something dying. The van couldn't climb the incline. He sat on the ramp, engine running, staring into the tree line in his mirror. A knock at the window. The man was standing there smiling. No car behind him. No explanation for where he'd come from. His name, Marcus would later learn, was Doyle. "You're not going anywhere on that wheel," he said, calm as someone discussing the weather. "Let me help you." Marcus called 911, reversed on the destroyed rim all the way back to the flat lot, kept the van moving in slow circles until the patrol car arrived. Officers swept the woods and found a campsite set back in the trees. Bedding, rope, cable ties, a prepaid phone. On that phone were photographs. Vehicles parked in that lot, shot over what appeared to be many separate nights. Marcus's van was in 3 of them. All 3 taken during the 58 minutes he'd been asleep. Doyle and the second man, never seen, never identified, somewhere in those trees the entire time, were gone by the time officers went looking. The rest stop was closed shortly afterward. No public explanation was given. Marcus made it to his destination the following evening. He didn't tell his family much. He sat at the dinner table and ate and looked at the people around him and didn't say a word about any of it. 3 weeks later, his phone rang. He almost didn't answer. Unknown number, middle of the afternoon, 3 weeks removed from a trip he'd been trying to quietly bury. He answered anyway. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Detective Sarah Voigt. She was calm and professional and got to the point quickly, which somehow made it worse. She wasn't calling about the rest stop. She was calling about the bag. Marcus sat down without realizing he was doing it. Sarah told him that what officers found in that duffel on the dark gravel road, the thing he had hit with his car, the thing that had made him get out and walk back alone in the dark, were the remains of a man named Aldrich Phones. I am 44 years old. To traveling alone. His car had been found abandoned at a gas station 30 miles back on that same route, which meant he hadn't made it far past the point where someone had decided he wasn't going to. Then Sarah told him the part that made the whole trip rearrange itself in his memory. All 3 roads Marcus had traveled that week, the one-lane highway, the snow-dusted back road through the dead town, the rest stop tucked into the trees, had each generated similar reports over the previous 18 months. Lone travelers, off the main route, isolated, targeted. Investigators believed it was the same network moving across multiple locations, using construction closures and GPS rerouting and the geography of dead signal zones to pull people off the interstates and into places where no one would hear anything and no one would come. Now, no arrests, she said, but they were working on it. She thanked him for the reports he filed. Then the call ended and Marcus sat holding the phone in a room that felt very still. He thought about Corvin Reese's gray SUV packed to the ceiling for a long trip, sitting cold at that pump with its owner already gone. He thought about Aldrich Phones pulling away from a gas station 30 miles back. Probably relieved, probably thinking the hard part of the drive was behind him. He thought about every set of taillights that had ever turned down that rest stop ramp before his did. He understood something then that he hadn't been able to articulate in 3 weeks of trying. The road hadn't almost killed him. Something patient had. Something that had been doing this long before Marcus took that exit and would keep doing it long after. Something that was, in all likelihood, still out there right now, waiting on a dark stretch of road for the next person whose GPS said to take the next exit. If you've had something happen on a road trip that never sat right with you, drop it in the comments below. And if this story stayed with you the way it stayed with Marcus, share it